Well, do we need to? Because isn't the first one is to approve the agenda, so we can approve the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move the agenda with flexibility.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. So we're going to move the agenda with flexibility.
We're just
Great.
going to skip the minutes.
Yeah, we'll skip the minutes. That's right. We'll come back to those. Great. So Joyce Lynn, good morning. Grant, hi. We're going to look at amendments to the format of monthly reports.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Grant Boykin, Public Affairs Executive Officer. Agenda item 2, which is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because since you authorized us to move forward with regulations in January, we've had several chances to talk, but these are the regulations that specify how employers will submit data to us. And we began the process in January. We had a 45-day comment period after the initial draft regulations were out. We did receive comments during the comment period, and then we had follow-up meetings with stakeholder groups after that. And we came back to you in July with recommended amendments that you adopted. And what you have, the package in front of you reflects the amendments that we were directed to move forward with last time. And if you approve the resolution that's in your packet today, we will go ahead and finalize the regulation package and submit it to, it goes through GovOps, Department of Finance, and the Office of Administrative Law before it finally goes to the Secretary of State and becomes finalized. So we are here to answer questions that you have, but.
So I'm sorry, I can't get my board book up, so I can't. Are there any questions from committee members about this? It's an action item, right? Okay. So
And
it's
there's
been
a
moved.
resolution to take action
Okay.
to adopt.
So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's been approved.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Joycelyn. Was that enough? Was that quick enough for you? Thank you. All right. Oh, you know what? Let me back up, Brian. No, you're fine, Joycelyn, sorry. But I should mention something at the beginning of the meeting, and I did not do that. The board will have a 10-minute public comment period at the end of each agenda item. Public comment after each item will be limited to the agenda item topic. There'll be another opportunity for statements from the public for items not pertaining to a specific agenda item at the end of the open session meeting. Individuals wishing to speak at a board meeting should complete and submit a speaker request form that's in the back of the room to the CEO or any other CalSTRS staff. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes for his or her presentation. If there's not enough time for speakers to have 3 minutes, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. Teachers' retirement board meetings are live, web streamed, and video archived, which are available to the public on calstrs.com website. To protect the privacy of minors who wish to address the board, public commenters under the age of 18 may address the board, but CalSTRS will not live, web stream, or video archive these comments. Public commenters over the age of 18 may be recorded and included in the web stream of this meeting. Members of the public may speak to the board during their allotted time, but audio or visual recordings from a third party are not allowed due to copyright issues. Okay? So I should ask, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on item 1, which was approval of our committee agenda? And then also, are there members of the public who wish to speak on item 2, which is our amendments to the format of the monthly reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 3, which is, and I did want to mention to the board that we are moving the fiduciary training that you'll see, I believe it's item 6. We're moving that to the end of our open session today, so it'll be potentially before or maybe after lunch, but it'll be our last open session item, and we'll be right next door to have kind of more of an educational environment. So fiduciary training will be our last open session item for today. All right, so let's go to item 3, which is Pension Solution, our Transformation Readiness Project. So we've got Ashish and Prashant and Jeff. Welcome, Jeff, in your new role. And we've got Graham Finley. Welcome. So update us on where we're at with Pension Solution. And I think you have a handout, right, for the board?
Yeah,
Our lovely placemats. Is that right?
everyone has that.
Does everybody have that?
Ready?
Good morning. My name is Ashish Jain. I'm Chief Technology Officer and the co-sponsor of this project. Today, we'll give you an update in our transformation and employee readiness, as well as what project activity is going on the ground. We'll provide you the risks and challenges and mitigation, and then next step. Jeff will cover the transformation and employee readiness. He's leading that effort, and then Prashant will take over the project activities. So, Jeff.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jeff Zimmer. I'm the Director of Transformation Readiness, and it's my pleasure to provide you an update on the readiness efforts that we're undertaking for the Pension Solution Project. A bit of background, I updated the Benefits and Services Committee about business transformation efforts in July of 18. We have since renamed the area to Transformation Readiness and aligned it to the Pension Solution Project. The work is the same, the teams are the same, the funding is the same, nothing has changed except about where it reports. And most importantly, what hasn't changed is our goal of maximizing adoption and usage of the system to get the most value from our investment. So today I'm going to talk about the audiences that are most impacted by our first functional rollout, which is coming up here in October, the soft launch of the employer readiness environment. And we have maybe 3.5 audiences that we deal with when we talk about readiness. We have staff, we have employers, benefit recipients, and the half is business partners that we interface with, like the State Controller's Office or CalPERS that we do business with. So today I'm going to focus on the two most impacted. That is staff and employers. So what we do every year or so is we go out and talk to staff to validate our approach to change. And we did this in fall of 2018. And we talked to focus groups of employees and say, hey, this is what we plan to do for change. What are you most concerned about? What do you want to know about? So I'm going to talk about the 3 main areas. We've done other things than this, but these are the 3 main areas that we heard from staff about what they're concerned about and what they want to know more of. So the first is hands-on time, which is completely understandable. When you have a new system, a new tool, the first thing that people want to do is touch it and use it and understand it. So that was completely expected. So what we did is some demonstrations, and these are different than the system demonstrations that are part of the project. Those display the functionality as designed to date. These were a deeper dive into how the functionality works for the areas impacted by it, mostly member account services and our financial services branch. So we did demonstrations. We reached more than 50 staff and member account services and other parts of the organization. And then we also created a modular demonstration that can be picked up by training teams and used in different parts of the organization so that they can do a repeatable exercise to get people hands-on to the system. There's a scavenger hunt to get some basic navigation tips and kind of get your way around the system. So that's how we're getting information out so that people can actually see what the system looks like. Secondly, I was happy to hear this because this is a core concept of change management and our methodology here is staff wanted to see the as-is and to-be. They wanted to see what the to-be processes are. And so what we started to do is compare the as-is and to-be. And this is a huge part of gauging the impacts to the organization. What we do now, what we do in the future, and what the changes are to get you there. So this is a very big part of change management. So it was encouraging to hear that the staff also wanted this. So we work with the project, we're on the project, but we work with the business core team that helped design the system and subject matter experts within the business. So that's how we get all this information together, and then we pair them, we compare the as-is and to-be, and this becomes a roadmap for change for each area. So they know what's coming, what decisions they need to make, and we've done more than 20 of these so far. And this is a best practice, and it's one of those do as I say, not as I do best practices, because often people say, hey, this is really important, but they don't do it until it's too late. So I'm happy that we're investing in this early because there's side benefits of discovering things that we maybe didn't intend or system functionality that we didn't quite understand. So we need to go back to the vendor and say, did you mean it to do this? And then we can actually get that before we even get to testing. So that's very helpful. So this is what we share with the business areas about their roadmap to change. And we're continuing on this work and we'll continue to do it till the end of the project. Finally, this was very encouraging to hear. It shows the engagement of staff with the project and frankly with the business itself. Staff wanted to know what we're doing to prepare employers for success because what the employers report is the foundation of our entire business. So those employees that work in the benefit areas that actually rely on the information from the employers to start a benefit, to modify a benefit, to keep maintaining the benefit, we want to make sure that the employers are ready. And staff was very interested in what are we doing on the project to make sure employers are ready to do this work. So we did some sessions where we did a deep dive into how it's going to work for the employers in soft launch, and again, focusing on the staff most affected in member account services and financial services. And then we did an organization-wide update about what we called the Road to Employer Readiness Destination Success. And that was a cross-functional audience of anybody in the organization. And we recorded one of those and put it up on the web so other people could see it that might not be able to attend. So we tried to address this in a number of ways to provide information to people about how we're getting employers ready. We've also done an introduction to Benefit Connect computer-based training and an introduction to Pension Solution computer-based training to give more information out to how the project works and specifically how we're preparing employers. Finally, this, I have to give a lot of credit to the learning and development team about this, is we recently completed 6 instructor-led training modules and 1 computer-based training module for the staff that are going to be supporting employers through the soft launch of the employer readiness environment. And that training actually starts in about 14 days. It might be 11 days. So in 11 days, they're going to start the staff training. So this is a big milestone beyond what you hear about the project and testing and design and everything. This is a big milestone for internal staff training. This is real. Now we're starting to train people about how the system works and how to support employers. So this is a big milestone. More than 22 hours of training that took more than 1,000 hours of staff time to create. This is happening now. So it's one of our first real milestones internally in the business that we could start to see the impacts of the project and people starting to get trained. So big effort there. Really happy with the collaboration between my teams and member account services and the vendor to get all of this training wrapped up. So we're going to start to deliver that in September. So on that note, I'll talk a little bit about how we are preparing employers. So let us scale this wall of text together. I wanted to give you some background. So it was hard to put everything together, but to give you an idea of how this has all started. So I spoke about how we're preparing staff, and now what have we done to prepare employers? And remember that in October, when we have the soft launch in the employer readiness environment, that's not a production environment, but we still want to set up the employers to be able to use the system, test the file format, the old file format, the new file format, and get used to it. So what have we done to prepare employers? We first started talking to employers in 2014, before the project really officially kicked off. We did a lot of outreach about, hey, we've got this project coming. Let's hear where you are. Let's talk about what the new business rules might be, any new file specifications, just really seeds of ideas about what is coming, kind of going through some of the requirements, very initial conversations. It got formal in 2018, where we did employer reporting partner assessments, that's ERP. An ERP is someone that reports directly to CalSTRS, be it someone with a custom system or someone that uses a payroll vendor, an employer that uses a payroll vendor. There's approximately 90 of these employer reporting partners. So during these assessments, we reach out to all of them, gave them a sneak preview of what the new file format would look like, have webinars, talk to them about their concerns, and get an idea of kind of where they are. So this was a big data collection effort that gave a good idea about where employers were, what their readiness stage was, and what we needed to do to prepare them. And then we're doing consultations now. These started last month. So this is a smaller group. This is about 35 participants. And it's going to be 18 employers that have custom systems, and there's some whales in there like LACO, LA County of Education, San Diego. And then we're talking with the payroll vendors. There's 6 payroll vendors that support a lot of employers. And you'll see in the assessments that when we reached out to that large group of 90, that's 97% of the annual contribution lines that come in. So now during these consultations, we're focusing on the 35. Okay, you have a custom system, you're a payroll vendor. We're also reaching out to the 11 employers that had comments in the first comment period for the new file format regulations. So we wanted to include them. We've done outreach to them already, but we wanted to get them again to say, okay, where are you now? So that's about the 35 participants in these consultations. And the purpose of these is determine, if you're a payroll vendor, when do you think you're going to have your system ready with a new file format to support your employers? If you're a custom system, where are you in your system evolution where you're going to be able to update your system and start reporting to the employer readiness environment? So this is determining when people are going to be ready. And then based on this, we're going to determine who's going to be the employer pilots around November, December. The 2 or 3 pilot employers that are coming into the employer readiness environment and start using it. So we're determining who those are, who's going to be ready. And the next step in 2019, and this is going to happen in November or December, webinars where we're going to talk to that large group of 90 again. Okay, we haven't talked to you since 2018. We've talked to your payroll vendor. If you're custom system, we've probably talked to you already. Where are you? Let's talk to you again, see where you are, and start determining the schedule so all of those employer reporting partners know when they'll be able to start using the employer readiness environment. Really get a schedule. Okay, you'll come in February, maybe you'll come in March, and start setting up these cohorts of employers to come in and use the employer readiness environment. And they all have unique needs, different relationships, employers and districts, or counties and districts, charter schools, custom systems, payroll vendors, trying to get their unique needs sorted out so we have a good approach to getting them to participate in the employer readiness environment. So that's where we share the strategy about the overall rollout. So that's a lot to talk about, but that's basically the last 4 to 5 years of how we've been reaching out to employers to get them ready. The last thing I'll talk about is, okay, we've talked to them a lot, and then we're going to share our strategy about when they'll be able to report and use the employer readiness environment. Again, all in the purpose to get them ready for FR2 when they start to report in production. That's the most important thing. That's when it gets real. So what tools are we going to provide? So basically, there's going to be what we call an employer support portal. This is a website that has links to our employer readiness environment, has a link to the production environment in the secure employer website, and it's going to have a link to the learning management system that will house all of our computer-based training for the employers. And then there's going to be a message board and some important documents, about 5 technical documents, a file specification, error resolution guide, some other job aids. That's happening in October. So we're starting to put tools out for the employers, and we're going to tell them about this when we do the kickoff. So in October, we're going to have a portal with these documents and some information. And then in November, we're going to put 2 or 3 computer-based trainings up that into the learning management system, and those are content specific to what the employers are going to need at that time. How to navigate the system, how to administer to your users, very simple things that they'll need to use in November, December for those pilot groups. And then later on, as we develop more CBTs, there's going to be a total of 6 CBTs for soft launch, about 10 hours of training total, that we're going to put out on the employer support portal to make sure that they are ready for when their cohort starts reporting. So all of that, it's been a joint collaboration between my learning and development team, the change management team, the vendor, and a lot of credit goes to our employer readiness team and member account services for doing all of this homework and legwork about talking to the employers and a very methodical approach to making sure we talk to everybody to understand their situation, understand their payroll vendor, understand their custom system, understand the dynamics of how they report. A lot of effort has gone in. There's Gantt charts out the ears about how many people, and there's tools to track the employer success criteria, because we want to make sure that we have actual milestones and points where we can measure, hey, were you able to do this? Check, you were. Okay, good. You can progress to the next point. Could you do this? Check, progress to the next point. So it's a very methodical approach designed by the employer readiness team that we're following for this. So a lot of effort has gone into this, and I feel that, this is coming up in October. I mean, we won't speak again until after the system goes live in a non-production environment, but that's happening in October. A lot of change coming, a lot of training coming, and a lot of employer preparation coming to make sure that they're ready for this. Of course, Sharon.
Good morning. Thank you so much. It was really thorough, and having gone through an EMR process, I'm like totally excited about this. But I just have one question. Is there like an 800 number? Because I heard okay, so I might have just missed it.
There's not an 800 number. So the way that it's a great question, and I wish I touched on this a little bit more, is that during the employer readiness environment, this is a 2-year period where the employers can use this non-production environment to test. We are training, that's part of the training that we're starting in September 17th. We're training employer services staff in the building to make sure not only do they do their day jobs and the regular production reporting for the employers, but they're going to be supporting the employers. They have different county representations, and then they're going to be responsible for, hey, San Diego, it sounds like you're trying to upload a file. Let me help you with that. And if there's any problems or I didn't understand what this is, we have a help desk process where if it can't be resolved at that level, we escalate it. And then finally, we escalate it to the vendor and say, something's wrong, you need to fix it. So there is a way that the employer can contact their employer services representative to get their questions answered and any problems escalated.
And a follow-up, I think that's fantastic. And a follow-up to that is, will there be somebody who's gathering all of this information to see if there's themes of like, okay, everybody's having the same glitch, let's figure out, we need to like do something different with that?
That's an excellent question. We have again, spreadsheets, just so many spreadsheets. But the tools that we have, I mean, it's by report unit. I mean, we have, how ready are you? Were you able to do this? Were you able to do that? What are we hearing from people? Uh-oh, this is a common theme. And that's great that we have this learning readiness environment because we'll have time to develop training or roll something out. Because I should have mentioned that after the webinars, when we talk to the employers again, that kind of group of 90, they're going to get, I'll quote, in-person visits, either at their site or webinars to make sure that they get a custom approach. So part of that is understanding more about what they need, and we'll hear more themes about how they're ready or not ready then. But definitely we're tracking a lot of metrics, just either anecdotally or by hard data about where people are when they're reporting.
And I just want to add, this is not a new thing because we have existing process. We are enhancing our existing process. So we are just looking, because this is we're doing for forever, for last 10, 15 years. So this is just not a new gig we will be doing. So we're just looking our existing process and how we are enhancing that one.
Okay, and then we'll be hearing about sort of what a report back at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
You're welcome.
That's weird. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. I'll help you. Okay. So, so it seems like I think I have a case of one of those. The more I talk about it, the more confused I get. So I just want to make sure that I have my mind around it. We're going to encourage 100% of our reporting agencies to begin using it, but we will have a smaller pilot program that we're working with more closely because they've committed to using it and we're committed to helping them, and so we can work out of the bugs of this greater pile. Okay.
Definitely. And let me elaborate on that a little bit because it sets me up nicely, is that there are a lot of employers ready. We want to go now. We want to go now. And the pilot is merely, we just kind of want to contain it a little bit. And then we will be reaching out to everyone. A lot of it depends on when they are ready.
Right.
So is your payroll vendor ready? And we've talked to all the payroll vendors and we have a schedule when they're going to update their systems for their employers. And some of the custom systems say, hey, talk to us in a year. We're just not ready yet because we're going through some other upgrade now, but we'll be ready in March or something like that. So it's about when they're ready. But definitely we want to start with a small group and just, hey, let's see how this works, and then start rolling out to cohorts and have them roll in.
I think it's a great plan.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was just confused because we were hearing that everybody's going to do it, and
Yes.
then, but I thought I'd heard that there was going to be a pilot, so I just wanted to make sure I had the two concepts
Of course,
straight in my mind.
of course.
You said that every reporting unit has somebody here that they interact with.
Yes.
And we have people here that interact with each one of our reporting agencies. They might
Yes.
have more than one reporting agency.
They
but
often do.
there's not a one-to-one correlation, but there's somebody here
Yes.
that can reach out to them. So as we start to do this training,
Mhm.
we're going to be able to ensure that someone at every single reporting agency has had this training.
Yes, that is the goal. Either computer-based training that we can roll out through our learning management system, or by the kind of on-the-ground delegation that we'll send if they choose it. Sometimes they say, just give us a webinar, but the idea is that we want to roll out training to everyone.
My concern is how quickly staff turns over sometimes at county offices, and
Understand.
the person that goes through the training might not be employed when they start to actually when they're actually mandated to start using it and stuff.
Right.
Are we trying to put in any stopgaps to ensure that that the people that they're going to be using to do it at the time they have to do it are the people
Right.
that those people have been trained? As to best of our ability?
Thank you for that last statement. Yeah, we cannot, there's a lot of variability, yes, in the staff that provide the reporting. What we're doing, it sounds like a hedge, but I swear it isn't, is that the relationships that we're forming through this outreach will know more about each area. And frankly, we deal with that kind of turnover right now.
Absolutely.
And we've dealt with it right now. So our employer services staff we have a good way to get people trained up as quickly as possible. So as we get closer to production, right now it's not as critical. If someone turns over and gets the training, we'll have more time to get the new person on board that's reporting from the district, for example, from the county. When we get closer to production, then we're gonna have to make sure, hey, everybody, are we all ready? Did everybody get the training? Is everybody ready? So those relationships are really gonna tell us where are they in their staffing, and what can we do in extra outreach to make sure that they're prepared if somebody recently turned over?
Then as an extension of that, and there's a lot of people here that already know that we have concerns about voluntary training and how often reporting agencies and districts don't participate in that. But if we start to develop those kind of relationships and we get a better grip on what these entities are and how they act, then maybe we can use that relationship to try to increase the 30% training rate we have.
Agree with that.
Perfect, thank you.
30%'s not a good grade, huh?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Are you all done, Danny? Okay. Bill?
I'm just overwhelmed by the scope of this exercise, and it's very impressive. And being the new guy on the block, I'm also baffled. And one of the things that the question I have is, you mentioned Wales, the Wales out there being the LA County School District and the San Diego County School District. What percentage of the benefits are paid to those members from those two school districts? Do we have a,
I couldn't say offhand.
but it would be a significant number of.
It would be not disproportionate, but there's more from those because they have more members, basically.
And so is there, and again, shows my ignorance, is there a different approach to the Wales as opposed to the other districts?
Yes,
And if so, what is that difference?
definitely. It's a good question.
Yeah.
So what Dana asked about, is there, and Nora did too, about is there a 1-800 number, is there a connection for the employer to talk to someone? So the existing business process in member account services, employer services has staff that have assignments for each county and each report source. So let's say someone might have a few Alpine and some smaller counties and that they report, but one person has San Diego, for example. And that is a large workload. So we try and consolidate and dedicate a lot of capacity for those large reporting agencies, for those employer reporting partners. So it's kind of baked into how we do it now. We know who our largest customers are, and we've assigned resources to do that now. So that just becomes more of the foundation that we're building to make sure that we continue to provide them updates, especially, again, these consultations that we're doing now to learn more about the custom systems. We're going to learn a lot about how they operate and much more about their unique situations. So both the employer readiness team that we have on the project and the existing employer services staff that support San Diego, for example, they're going to get to know each other real well about how we can better support San Diego to be ready to report at FR2 and functional rollout 2 in production. I hope that answers your question.
It does in part. I guess the other question I would have is there any similarity between the two systems that, let's say, LA and San Diego, where there could be more uniformity so that they're, or does that just not happen?
They have different complexities. There's, for example, San Diego has a lot of charter schools, and so that's a thing that we monitor and make sure that we talk to them often about how the charter schools are reporting through the county in San Diego. And Lake's just big and has a lot of members in different situations. So they each have their own flavor of complexity. So it's hard to put them all together and have a consistent approach to all of them, other than we're going to be here for you, whatever you need.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
Betty?
Thanks, Sharon. A couple questions. So the staff, the CalSTAR staff that will be part of this process, does that include staff in our other offices as well, or is it mostly staff here?
It's mostly our employer services staff here in the
Will there be
building.
a role for staff in our other offices, or is it just all centralized pretty much here?
As of right now, no, but we do know that we want to utilize the member service centers for outreach training.
Right.
So there will
Okay.
be, we'll leverage that, our geographic presence, to make sure that we get out there and talk to the employers that are close to certain areas. But the member services staff themselves likely won't, they'll know about the project
Yes.
if we do our change management right, but they won't have the direct interaction with the employers.
Okay, all right. And then I guess I just want to make a request on behalf of the State Controller's Office. We would love a training.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a very robust.
Yeah, that's an important partnership for our
Yes,
benefit payroll.
is.
So absolutely, whatever we can do to smooth that.
Yeah.
you got it.
Let's do that right at the beginning. Right up
Make it
front.
happen.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Betty. Karen?
Okay, just to follow up on Dana's question about the training. I know that as teachers, we've always gone to training, we've always done the training, And then as far as afterwards, there's some kind of a follow-up or a check-in kind of a thing?
Yes.
Or sometimes when you do the training, you don't really know the questions you don't know.
Right.
And so is there some sort of that follow-up afterwards, after their training? Because we don't want to wait till it goes to audits or appeals or things like that. So, your response?
We're leveraging computer-based training in a way that we've never done before, and using a learning management system. And what's nice about that is that you can actually do skill assessments within the computer-based training. Learn about this and actually do an exercise within the module, and then there's an assessment at the end where you evaluate how effective it was, and we can get a running total of how effective the training is for employers. Like, oh, this quiz is not going well. We're getting a lot of wrong answers on this particular assessment from this module. Let's do some other training around that to make sure, or clarify the module itself to make sure the training is sinking in. So just the delivery of the training has evaluation and assessment built into it. And I think a lot of what we'll learn is, because we have the luxury of this employer readiness environment, is that we'll be able to do on-the-job training after they take the training and they start to do it. It'll be kind of a low risk because it's not production. Like, hey, how'd that work? And what didn't work for you? Or what else would you like to have known to make that work better? I think there'll be a lot of back and forth with both our employer readiness team and the employer services staff about talking to an employer once they actually do it. Because as you know, it's the practical application of that training that makes it sink in. So you can take CBTs until you're asleep, but when you actually do it, that's when you start to learn. So we're hoping we're setting them up for success with the approach to computer-based training and in-person training, but we want to use the environment as a learning laboratory as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members on the transformation readiness project? Are you good, Jeff?
I'm good,
Is that enough
thank
for you? Oh, thank you. I'm excited. I think there's a lot of moving parts, and the districts all are really unique. And to Dana's point, there's a ton of turnover in our HR and retirement units. And so I feel like, it's like you can only control what you can control. So I feel like on the CalSTRS side, we're ready to go, and it sounds like we have controls in place. I think it's just takes two to tango. So it'll be interesting to how it all translates out, but excited about it. My hope is obviously that, to your point, Karen, that, less audits, less appeals, that, more members happy with, what they're getting and everything's accurate. So that's our hope, is accuracy moving forward. So.
This is a near and dear to all of us, actually, and we are putting our effort in the right place. The training, the CBT, just like he was telling, that we didn't do before. So I think this will be a little bit add-on to all, and we are looking from all the angles that how we can support. A lot of lesson learned in this, and the team is doing an amazing job in this.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And then are you going to go into pension solution and kind of give us an update?
Sure.
How things are going?
Yeah. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Prashant Mittal, Pension Solution Project Director. So I will cover some of the key updates for all the 3 function rollouts we have in the project. For the FR1, we actually made more progress than what is listed here. And the dashboard that you have is most updated. The highlight is that we have completed the user acceptance testing for the function rollout 1. User acceptance testing is important because it allows the business users to test the system and ensure that it is working the way they expect it to work. So great news. I mean, it has been completed on time, the way we anticipated, and we are almost 1 month away from go live. And next month, in next month, we'll be performing some readiness activities to make sure team is ready, the business users are ready to use the system. As Jeff said, they are going to be going under training. And we are going to ensure that all the data conversion activities and many of the activities that goes into preparing the production environment are in place and are intact. So amazing progress on FR1, and we are certainly getting very close to go live activities. For FR2, we have completed the Neospin system development as of last week, and we are about to finish some of the interface development testing and making good progress. Things are going as planned from the FR2 perspective. The other 2 areas I want to highlight here is around the system testing is going as per plan. We are looking forward to complete our first part of system testing in November timeframe, and the user acceptance testing is going through some of the planning and the test case preparation activities right now. So all the three areas are progressing as expected at this point of time. For FR3, we reported in the July board meeting that we have completed the fit gap exercise with CGI. And fit gap exercise is a way for CalSTRS to explain to CGI what we expect them to deliver part of FR3 rollout. And the next step after fit gap was to reconcile some of the gaps that were identified during the fit gap. And we have reconciled most of the gaps, and we still have about 3 more items to work with CGI to make sure we are able to reconcile those. And the main guiding principle that we are using is the scope guiding principle that both teams agreed to determine the scope and the cost perspective of those reconciliations. So we are hoping to come to a resolution on the remaining 3 items, hopefully in next couple of days or maybe next 2 weeks. And once we are done, we are looking forward to update the staffing plan and the schedule to continue our other activities. That's all I had for FR1, FR2, and FR3. Yeah.
Prashant, can you just comment, because looking back on the 3 different functional rollouts, you had similar challenges. I think resource strain was on the first 2, and scope containment, and then scope containment on the last. Can you just talk, I mean, I know you have the mitigations, but maybe give us a little texture on those challenges, what those look like in terms of real practical.
Sure. And so the way things are working is that we have divided the project into 3 function rollouts. And right now you can see that activities are happening in each function rollout. And we have the same number of people who are working into multiple activities. So at one point of time, there are so many concurrent activities. Some are supporting FR1, some are supporting FR2, some are supporting FR3, plus lots of people are supporting project. They are also supporting operations in the organization. So the resource contention is just to, the challenge that we have listed is to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot to cover. We have good plans in place, but certainly if some of the activities don't go as planned, it may do a side effect on other subsequent downstream activities. So it is just to acknowledge the fact that there is a lot that we have in our plate, and even though we have a plan, but there's always a risk that in case something do not go well in one activity, and what kind of impact it may leave on the other activities around it. So far we have been able to manage the challenges around resources quite well, but certainly as we are landing ourselves into the FR2 testing and training activities, I'm sure we are going to see more harder or more complicated resource contentions, and I'm hoping we will be able to manage those challenges as well, since we have been able to manage it so far.
Cassandra, did you want to jump in?
The scope containment, what the exercise that we go through on a fit gap is the contract currently contains high-level requirements, and then when we look at when we go into more detailed requirement assessment, then there's a determination on what actually we want the system to perform. And then there's an analysis on whether that was in scope or out of scope. And there might be a disagreement on whether or not the functionality that we actually want to have the system perform was that part of the original agreement. And if not, then there's a price tag associated with that. And so that's what we're negotiate out. And there are some items where we feel they're in scope and CGI might feel they're out of scope. And so we have to get those resolved. There's 3 items that are outstanding. Sorry.
That's helpful. Betty.
I guess a question on that, Cassandra, the 3 items that are outstanding, is that going to change any potential changes to, I guess, cost or how we've contemplated the initial?
It is not going to change the cost associated. Right now, we're looking for more credits than what we currently have. Because during the when we've been going through functional rollout 2, and when we're looking at the requirements as we move through the project, there are some scope items that we take out because we've decided we don't need them, or we want to put them off to a later time because of the schedule constraint. There's other things that we might want to add. So there's some swapping that's being done, and we're managing a bucket of credits of about $6 million as our contingency within this contract. We're still doing that for the Fit Gap 3. There are some things that we're taking out and some things that we agree that they were out of scope, and so we're paying for. So we're still operating on a credit. At this point, we're looking at adding to that credit, so we're not looking at debiting the credit. So, yeah, so, I mean, I think CGA might disagree, but therein lies our conversations that we're having. We're close.
Okay.
We're close, yeah.
And I guess it's hard to know without, knowing the specifics of what may come up when you have to determine whether it's in scope or out of scope. But if it's a decision around additional resources or a more protracted schedule, I mean, are those, I hope those would be kind of.
All of those things are included. I mean,
Okay.
every scope is really work and it's hours,
Yes.
basically, and how you're going to build that functionality. So all of that time allotted to build that functionality is built into the schedule. So that's all being considered.
Okay.
On whether or not it would push the schedule or not. But we're still within schedule. We're still within the budget.
Yeah.
And we expect to deliver within budget on the schedule, so.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I mean, I just want to be, I hope that we can be, honest is not the right word, but the schedule is quite compressed when you think about all that needs to happen and who we need to involve. And so if it gets to the point of where it's really kind of a rub, I hope we can revisit the schedule because we want to do it right.
Yeah, and that's one of the discussions that we had when we were looking at the budget and trying to have some contingency within, we're trying to build back contingency in. It's because if we do see their schedule strain, then we will have to have the ability to deploy additional resources, and we have to have the money to pay for those additional resources. So that's why it's important that we have some contingency on the contract and within our own internal staff budget.
Okay.
So that's what we've really worked hard to get that built in there.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sheesh.
Okay, so for the next step, just like Prashant mentioned, we are just finalizing the FR3 scope, and we are confident that maybe in a month or so, we'll have a full end-to-end the scheduling as well as the staffing needs. This is a big thing happening this month in the 26th and 27th, a demo. I know this is a demo for Karen, is a near and dear to you. This is a big demo, actually. We have to end-to-end demo, and if anyone is interested, please let us know, and then we'll accommodate that one. This is a 2-day demo from entire functional rollout. That's very complex, benefit calculation, cancellation, and all. So if anyone of you interested, please let us know. And then just like Jeff and Prashant is saying that with the soft launch activities happening, and we are confident at this moment we'll going a little bit more depth next week, the date, but looks like that October 9th is the go live for that. Any question for me, for Jeff and Prashant, before I hand it over to Graham?
I don't have, oh, sorry, I do have somebody. Gail.
Thank you, and again, this is really remarkable, great job on it. I'm curious to know if your consultant, if CGI stays on with you during the rollout to the extent there's problems to troubleshoot kind of in the moment?
Yes, and we have in our schedule and in our contract for 1 year, they will be here. It's just not like it's live and they will be walk out.
Oh, good, okay. Thank you.
See no one else in the queue. And Graham, as you kind of give us feedback from your perspective, I think Betty's comments are really relevant to our role as the board, because I'm always kind of constantly, as we talk about these big, long, costly projects, it does seem like schedule and budget are probably, in terms of our oversight role. And then I think at the end of the day, we want it to be functional. I mean, my hope is my employer, my district, will get the numbers right. That's our hope is that. And so I echo Betty's sentiment that, being straightforward, I know you are, but just realistic about the time frame. We want to get this done right. We're spending a lot of money and time and staff hours on it. So if you can just help us to think about what we need to be thinking about in terms of oversight. Anything you want to highlight for us? Or?
Yeah, sure. So I think if I'm going to organize my comments, probably talking aligned with the 3 functional rollouts is probably the best way to do it. And I guess I have some slides coming up, but I probably don't need them for this conversation, actually. So the functional release 1, I mean, I think what Jeff and Prashant and Ashish have said is right on track. UAT is complete, on track to do the soft launch, and I think the level of investment in employee readiness I think has become apparent. And there's no way you can guarantee there won't be issues because the population is so diverse. Something's going to come up, but I think the level of investment in preparation is, I think it's obvious. On functional release 2, again, project is on track, schedules is progressing, testing is progressing. The last demo is scheduled for the end of this month. We expect it to go as successfully as the others. It'll be a much more comprehensive one, end-to-end functionality, but we expect it to be a success. If there's one concern or risk area around functional release 2 in particular that we have, it's really the stress on the business team, just in terms of the amount of work on their plate and the fact they've had a couple of departures of key individuals from that team recently. The project is looking to replace those people, obviously, but it has created some gaps in the team that are having to be covered by existing team members, and that's just increasing the workload on that group. So I think that's one area, a watch area, because that team is obviously very busy already, and this is just adding to the workload. In terms of functional release 3 and the negotiations, I think Cassandra sort of talked about the process that's through, and it appears we're not there yet, but close on the negotiations. Maybe by next week I'll be resolved, and it does appear that however it comes out, it's not going to require any modifications to the overall budget because the contingency is certainly adequate and may even increase. The other point about the schedule. That is one thing I think that the project has been taken into consideration. If you think about the sequence of, how do we look at a piece of functionality and decide, how important it is. Obviously, the business requirements come first in terms of what the solution needs to be and to provide to be successful. But part of the conversation is also, can we actually get this done? Because the bucket is pretty full in terms of things that have to be done. So that is there's a consideration. It's not stopping the project doing from something that they think is important, but it's something they think about a lot. And certainly it has a cost bearing as well, because if the schedule increases, that's going to have a cost implication too. So the project is, I think, being fairly diligent about making sure whatever is signed off on for FR3 can be achieved within the same timeline associated with it. Now that'll all be sort of blown out once we get to the end of negotiations and have the scope defined. Then we'll go into more detailed schedule definition. But at this point, it doesn't appear that there's likely to be any impact to scope or schedule from the FR3 scope negotiations. I would say a couple of things about what we're going to be focusing on. I think they basically sort of follow up on conversations we've had already. So the FR3 scope negotiations we've already talked about. As I think Ashish mentioned, this is really the first sort of live application of the scope determination process that CGI and CalSTRS agreed to in the fall as a process to address exactly this issue. When there are questions about what's in scope, what isn't in scope, it was a set of principles and guidelines agreed to. They've actually had a chance to, exercise this in real time. And I say for the most part, it's generally worked. I do think there are probably an opportunity to go back and look at the process, given there's probably some lessons learned and maybe updates to be made, given that these things will occur again. Even though we think scope is defined, things will probably occur during testing that will require a revisiting of these conversations. So it's good that we've had this opportunity to work through the process in FR3. Business benefits and success measures. This is some conversations that we've been having for a long time, but also I think sort of accelerating in a way, thinking about how the project is going to measure success from a, beyond just cost and schedule, but also thinking about productivity impacts. One of the things that's inevitable when a system like this goes live is there will be impacts to day-to-day productivity on an operational level, and we can predict those, or at least we can forecast them. And the more we know about that, the more proactive we can be, and it doesn't take anybody by surprise. So there are some more of those conversations happening. We did have the opportunity to sit in on the employee readiness consultations that Jeff mentioned. I think that's been very valuable for us, just as an opportunity to see the dialogue between the employers and their representatives and CalSTRS. And I think one of the things we were trying to get a handle on is whether employees were able to share their concerns and, really sort of, if they have a question, get it out there and have it discussed. And I think we were, fairly assured that nobody's editing themselves. And if they've got an issue, it's being brought on the table. So that's been positive. And then the final area, really around resource management, permanent replacements for those roles that have currently empty or they have acting members, and then the forecasting and business area resources as we've got FR1, FR2, and FR3 activities in parallel. That's an area of particular attention for us. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Let's see, any questions from committee members? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. We look forward to hearing more, especially after October. Jeff, let us know in November. Are we going to have will we have? Okay, I'm sure.
Sharon, one more thing.
Sure. Can you hang on 1 second.
Press me?
Yep. No, I gotcha.
Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Jeff for preparing this handout that all of us have on here.
Yes.
Because when I was a new person on the board, I really didn't know the language that everybody was speaking. So everybody was talking about a name and then what CalSTRS was branding it and what was real in the cyber world. So I asked Jeff to prepare this chart for us so that we can have some knowledge of the chronology and the wording that's being used in some of the documentation. So thanks, Jeff.
That's really great. And thanks for requesting that, Karen. I think the acronyms, especially I've been on the board 8 years and I still kind of, SAP and Neospin. And so I think I love things like this that just make it really clear kind of, the relationships and the connections and all the different entities that are related to this important project. So thanks, Karen, for asking.
Thank you.
Jeff,
And we're also providing the glossary for you for all the acronyms. In
Right.
There. So I think.
And the
Great.
glossary, that's great.
Excellent, thanks. All right, item 4, that's you, Brian and Grant. And I just wanted to preface this conversation, it's public comment framework, and I think the board had seen an email that Harry and I sent out, I think it was last week, just mentioning that this was going to be an item that we talked about because the board's, been wrestling with how best to balance the work of the board and also the fact that we're a public entity and we have a very open culture here at CalSTRS and we welcome public comment from our members and people that are not our members to what we do with the business of CalSTRS. And so trying to figure out what's the right balance. I think we've had some pretty interesting, helpful conversations as board members around how we feel about public comment. We have different experiences on different boards and different places around public comment. So I guess I just wanted to say, I think this is a work in progress. Our board, we've always been open to just having conversations and modifying things along the way as we see is going to be the best way to move forward as an entity. So that's why we're having this conversation today. So thanks, Grant. Thanks, Brian, for preparing the item for us, and I'll let you take it away.
Well, I'll start, but I'm not going to say much because your preamble kind of covered what I was going to say, especially the word balance, because that's what we're ultimately trying to do, is try and come up with the appropriate balance between access and for the public to address the board, but also meeting efficiency. And so the purpose of this item is to review the current practices, the practices we've had over the years for public comment, and also to consider potential changes you might want to pursue. The genesis, I would say, really started last year with your discussion over the strategic plan. And one of the goals of the strategic plan is meeting efficiency, and it calls out reconsidering the public comment framework for that. And so, this is really governance issues and it's legal issues, which is why I'm really going to let Brian lead, but I'm up here because it falls on my team to coordinate public comment, to speak to people before the meetings or at the actual meetings and try and make things go relatively smoothly. And then also, if you do pursue the regulations path, we do the outreach work, and regulations in recent years has fallen largely on governmental relations. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian.
This is an information item today. We're having a discussion, and then the idea is to have it come back in November to take action.
With some guidance from the board on what you'd like us to bring back.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
I appreciate the setup and the discussion. I know it's mentioned in the item, the history of this board and its openness and its transparency and the public and our members feeling free to stand up and step up to the microphone whenever they had something to say, and board members, chairs recognizing those folks just by their physical presence in front of the microphone. And that's worked for years. But it's getting more complex. Your meetings are getting more complex. You're dealing with much more complex issues. And so we look to Bagley-Keene. And we use Bagley-Keene, but the name of it is the Open Meeting Act. Right? And so, I've spoken to many of you over the years about the Open Meeting Act. And really the purpose of it is so the public can participate in the public's business. So your business is the public's business. And when we look at Bagley-Keene and we look at sum it up, it is to provide meaningful access for public participation. And that's when you look at, is there an agenda? Does the agenda sufficiently describe the item to be discussed so a member of the public who's interested could show up? Do you have ADA access? Are you including the public in all the things that you're discussing? Are you limiting your closed session items to just those narrowly tailored items that are in the statute? All of which is sort of your operational environment. But another issue under Bagley-Keene that's really built into it is an issue of fairness. If you want meaningful access, that means meaningful access for everyone, or as many people as can fit within the reasonable time limits of a meeting. Bagley-Keene, the law, has not much to work with. In one section, it says member of the public shall be allowed to speak before or during an agenda item. That's the guidance that it gives you, without restriction. The next guidance is right after that. The next section says, but the governing body may adopt a regulation, and the regulation may address the total time for discussion and the time for individual speakers. So for the pointy-headed lawyers in the room, and maybe that's just me, if the first section doesn't include those two sections, those two requirements, then therefore you can read the law saying, without a regulation, you can't limit the time and you can't limit the speaker. But when we have a law that clearly invites the board to adopt a regulation to deal with public comment, it's something to consider, especially as public comment gets more and more complex. And there may be members of the public who are not getting an opportunity to speak because of the sheer number of speakers that you have. Courts in California have recognized that it is impossible to allow unlimited discussion on every single item and get your business done. That's, every time courts look at this, they understand that reasonable restrictions are necessary to get the business done. They're not restrictions on First Amendment. They're invited in the statute. So Sheila Azamoro of my staff did a survey at some of the, and did some benchmarking, and we looked at 18 different regulations from state agencies, a couple of cities. And one of the things that we found is 10 out of those 18 regs have speaking limitations as far as time, but they all say the chair or the person running the meeting, she or he can adjust those times as reasonably necessary. And then there are some considerations based upon the amount of time of the meeting, based upon the business, based upon the public sensitivity of the item. So there are some criteria that a chair, let's say, could use to adjust those times. And those are in these regulations that we looked at. So for the purposes of this board, if you were to pursue a regulation that would really kind of encapsulate what you went over at the beginning of the meeting, which is sort of a reasonable way to conduct your business, it would still, my recommendation, based upon our read of these examples, it would still allow the flexibility of whoever is running, whether it's a committee or the board meeting, to make adjustments either on per time per speaker or on the item, on the agenda item. Some of these that we looked at do have a non-agenda item public comment covered in the regulation, which you already do.